Centerpiece. The area.
I'll tell you that you're the last person we talk to today.
Hello. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Amy.
Hi, I can hear you.
Great. Hey, Andrea. There's Al.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be back. I've missed y'all.
It was a nice little break. It was a
We
nice
don't
little
get a
break, but it's time to do it.
We get no break. Y'all got no break either because y'all been working. Y'all been putting work in, going right on. That's what. That's smart.
Exactly.
That is smart. See, Dr. Stedman's with us tonight.
Yes, and I'm glad to hear you say they put work in because they heard that from me a lot before we closed out. I'm glad to hear that.
They've been doing really well. I've been very pleased.
That's
and
great.
The work's been very, very good quality as well.
It should have been.
Yeah, you've trained them well. I appreciate that.
I'm glad to hear that. That's great news.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's why I teach them the second semester. It's easy.
They said we had
Okay.
Easy.
His insurance, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So should we meet next week?
Whoops, sorry.
All right. Great.
Glad you mute that phone. Some people just don't even
Everybody's trying to get started. I hope we can get through this in a reasonable amount of time tonight. We've got a lot to cover. Make sure that we get it all. I'm going to go ahead. What time is it? We still got a couple of minutes. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. I'm hoping that Doctors Massengill and Tobias will join us as well tonight. They're usually with us, but we'll go ahead and I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. We're already recording, and so we'll do that. I've still got a couple minutes before we get started. And so I think I've got everything loaded that needs to be loaded. Let me move that out of the way some so we can see.
I started getting work in today already, Dr. Lamb, for the cap, and the one I got was very, very good.
Oh, well, great.
Yeah, so my students have already started submitting work as well.
That's good. It's going to be a very, very quick summer. What I'm worried about, and we talked about this last night, what I'm worried about is that at some point schools are going to open back up for people to come back in the summer and try to get some things completed from the spring and do some planning for the fall. And what I worry about is if we're not really on the ball here, that we're going to get caught in that. I don't know if they're going to try to pay teachers or not. I'm guessing not.
Well,
but I won't be surprised if they don't call teachers back at some point this summer.
Well, what I was told today, I know, and in Robeson County, and I think that they're following guidelines that's been given down. Their teachers are coming back in, but they're coming back in by appointments, and they can only bring so many in at a time.
Right.
Then they clear them out. So that's going to be carrying on throughout the entire summer to get them all in there and to get it all done.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'd already heard that some of them may try to wait till phase 2.
Okay, Tracy just said they're only allowing 6 teachers at a time. That's what's happening in our county as well.
Yeah. I think some districts may wait until phase 2 where more can come in, but I know that here before long, our teachers, our school folks are going to get snowed under trying to close out from the spring, all the stuff that has to be done, planning for the fall. So we better hit the ground running this summer, just in case. It's, we had a little break here. We could work on our work early, but we may not have that all the way through. So that's kind of my sermon tonight is we better make hay while the sun's shining, because it may get really, yeah, Amy says she's in the building now. I mean, it may get really hectic. Now, if that happens, and the reason I said that was to say this. If that happens and it gets really hectic, we'll look at how what we're doing. We'll make some adjustments if we have to. If everybody gets called back in and everybody's snowed under, we'll push some deadlines. We'll do some things. We'll do what we have to do. And so I want to start out by welcoming everybody to Mels 603 for the summer. We've got the C2, C4, and C8 sections. That's Dr. Tobias, Dr. Massengill, and Dr. Stedman. And I want to start out by thanking them and kind of reminding everybody how we work in 603. When you put your work into discussion board for my review on your tasks, and you do your discussion board activities, those come to me. The only time I'll send you to a coach for you to work with them in their shell is if it's beyond what we can do. Now, I've had a couple come in task ones, and I simply said, add your master schedule, continue with peer review. That means, leave it up for students to remove it, but move on. It's great. And the reason I mentioned the master schedule is you're going to need it in task 3. So go ahead and find it now. And you can put it in task 1. But so you'll have it. You're going to need that when we get to task 3. But you will not work with your coach unless you want to, or I send you to them. And of course, they have a shell. You're already populated in their clinical shell. You've got 3 shells for this summer. You've got the class shell. You've got the shell, the 698 shell, which we won't use for internship. And then you've got a clinical shell that has your coach's name on it. C2 is Tobias. C4 section is Massengill. C8 is Stedman. You will work with them in that shell if you choose to, or if I send you to them. Otherwise, you just work with me. In 603, we don't put you through any extra hoops, putting work in more than one time. If there's something you're missing, I'll just tell you, and we'll move on, and I'll assume that you'll just add whatever that is.
Number 10.
So that makes things go a whole lot faster. You've been trained well. You know the process on everything, so there's no need to go back and reinvent the wheel.
What do you want?
There's my information. You can call or email me anytime. There's the grade point system. You know how to look at my grades. You know where you are at all times. There's our Zoom link that works every week. Go ahead and do your EVA, your verification activity. There's your textbooks. Let me mute everybody. There's your textbooks. There's only 2. The Principal's Guide to School Law, you'll use that the rest of your career. I can't recommend that highly enough. The Resource Management book, we don't use it a lot in summer, but it's the only resource book that's really on the market. You need to have that book. And so those are our books. That's our course overview. You know how it works. We come online. We try to keep it to an hour, no more than an hour and a half every week. And we have everything that's due is on our weekly schedule. So every week when we start our class, we start out with our weekly schedule. And so this week, looking at our weekly schedule, we're working on discussion board activity 1 and OMA task 1. You say, boy, that's due. So now remember, we come on Wednesday, everything's due on Sunday night, and you're on your honor to get it in. If you don't, that's not the end of the world. You got more time. Now, on task 1, you've actually got this week and next week, because task 2 is a simple copy and paste. Let me say that again. OMA task 2 is a simple copy and paste. So all you have to do is go back to your AppTel, copy tasks 1 through 3 of your AppTel, the last evidence you did. Take the labels off of it, like task 1 description. You just take these labels off in the instructions. You just take those off, copy the whole thing, and then go to your template, your OMA template, which is obviously in our shell, and just copy and paste it. And that's it for task 2. So you actually got this week and next to work on task 1, which is by far the bulk of the OMA. We went over this in the spring, but as a reminder, task 2, which is due Sunday week, takes 15 minutes or less. Copy and paste tasks 1, 2, and 3 of the AppTel. So you've got from now until next Sunday week to get your OMA task 1 done. It is a little more. It is a little more involved, but here's the thing about it. It's fairly straightforward, easy things to find. So if we look at that template that I probably just, if we look at what's got to be there, the contextual analysis of school context, internal and external. Internal is like your grades, your master schedule, discipline, attendance, everything that's on your state report card and everything that's on your demographic information about your school, all of those things. I've got an example in there for you to look at. The current structures and procedures, that's your master schedule, your duty roster, supervision schedule. Now, for those of you who don't know, supervision schedule is after school activities, duty roster is during the day. Like who's going to do hall duty, who's doing cafeteria duty, who's doing monitoring of the gym or the bus lot, the car rider lot. That's duty schedule. Supervision schedule is your after school activities. You won't have a lot if you're in elementary. You'll have more if you're in middle. You'll have a lot if you're in high school. But those are your structures. Your master schedule, I'm sure all of you know what a master schedule is. That's who teaches what, where, when, and why. And so I have one of those. Let's see if I can. I had one, just a simple one already preloaded here. This is like an elementary one that's got, where everybody's doing every day, what they're having, what teachers. This is a simple. They go from this to a very intricate one that may be pages long. Now, if you don't know where to find this, it should be in your faculty handbook. If it's not, the administrator that you work with at your school can generate a master schedule out of PowerSchool. It'll just print it for you. It's a graphic representation of who teaches what, where, and when. The bulk of what we do in the first half of this course is about how to build a master schedule. A school organization or the management routine is like a triangle. The top is the school improvement plan. That's what you worked on last semester, is your academic piece and your staff development piece that goes along with that. Well, that has to be supported by your master schedule and your budget. Your school budget have to support those academic goals that you have for your school. And so what we're going to be working on this summer is learning how to develop a legal master schedule, supervision schedule, and duty roster. That's the goal, the first half of the course. That master schedule is checked every month by your Department of Public Instruction. It's called the School Activity Report, SAR. Just like attendance is checked every month in terms of the Principal's Monthly Report, the PMR, and those are very important, and they have to do with funding. And let me briefly kind of get you an understanding. Schools, when you get money from the state, when you get your state allotment money per pupil, it doesn't come for the number of pupils that you have enrolled. It comes from the number of pupils that attend. And so we subtract absenteeism from that money. You don't get that money up front. Modified accrual accounting system. The school district has to have enough money to pay for the first month of instruction. state reimburses them that money in 10 monthly installments. So for example, if the per pupil expenditure in North Carolina is $7,000 a year, you don't get $7,000 before school starts. You get $700 at the end of the first month of school. I know you've heard that related to, you know, we look at staffing and positions in terms of at the end of the first month. That's why. Money doesn't come till the end of the first month, and it only comes in 1/10. It comes in 10 installments. Now, that 700 is great, is even reduced further. We multiply that by the district's attendance average. So if your attendance average is only 95%, they take 5% of your money off. So you lose $35 on that 700, you only get $665 per pupil. That's why attendance is so important. Now, as we're going to learn in one of our later case studies on Leandro, that state money cannot be manipulated. Most of it pays state salaries. And so that we know that the money goes to the students in the school that it's intended to be. That's what Leandro says. Can't manipulate that money. That school and those students have to get that $7,000. We can't do a district power equalizing where wealthier schools get less and richer get more. That's the Leandro case we'll talk about later. So the way that they track that state money is through your school activity report. Who's teaching what, where, when, and why. Because when you get state money at the school level, you don't get it as cash money, you get it in positions. And your school earns so many positions. And so the way they track that and certification and highly qualified is through your master schedule. So you have to learn how to build a legal master schedule. That's what we're going to be doing the first half of the course. There are, you know, the rationale on how you build a master schedule. Federal law comes first, then state law, then local board policy, then EBOS, and then teacher input. Those are the 5 steps to building a master schedule. That's what we're going to cover as we get through this semester. So that's what that looks like. So if we go back here, our weekly schedule, you'll have activities on your discussion board and you'll have your tasks. You know what to do on task 1 and 2 of the OMA. We've already covered that. I've kind of gone back over that tonight. Make sure, the only other thing that I would say is, let me get back here. Make sure that you do an audit of all of your exceptional as in programs and special needs populations. What that means is all your federal programs. That would include EC 504, Title I, English as second language, gifted, and if you have CTE, career and technical education. Those are all federally funded programs that the money for the program and the teachers comes from them. Make sure you audit all of those programs, what you've got at your school, what they're supposed to get. Because that's going to be really important when we start building that master schedule. And
Dr. Lamb,
then,
if they're based on where they are, Indian education would be included in that as well in some parts of the state.
right. And then the last thing, and don't forget this one, is remember the school budget, the local school budget needs to support the school improvement plan. Remember that triangle? Well, who develops the school improvement plan? The school improvement team. So we need to know about your budgeting process. Is the school improvement team who develops the school improvement budget plan, are they involved in the budget? That's the only way that we're sure that the initiatives from the school improvement plan are funded through our local school budget. For example, if our school improvement plan says we're going to work on reading this year, do we have more time in our master schedule? That's one corner of that triangle. And on the other, did we spend more money on reading? Did we buy the reading supplementary materials that we think we need? That's the whole notion here of the triangle, that to support your academic initiatives, you have to make sure you're aligned with your master schedule and your budget. If those 3 are not aligned, if those aren't the basis of your triangle, you know, your triangle will fall over. It will crumble, and your academic achievement will not happen. So managing a school operationally, you know, that's what we're working on this semester. How do I go about supporting my academic program? We do it with the master schedule and the school budget. That's the big rocks that we're going to be working on this summer. So this is task 1. It's a lot of information to gather, to put in that. Look at your example. Task 2, as I said, is very simple. It's simply a copy and paste of task 1, 2, and 3 of the app tell. Take the labels of that off. Task 3, we'll talk about it more next week, but if you're getting there already, this one is pretty simple. You know, the action plan in the OMA is a draft of a new schedule or a part of a new schedule that you've revised based on these criteria that we have on the screen. So the first thing is you assess the current scheduling procedures, strengths, and area for improvement. Now, don't just assess the schedule, but the procedures. Did we start with federal law? Did we then look at state board policy and state law? Did we then look at local board policy? And then did we look at our EVOS scores that tell us which teachers do the best job teaching what? And then did we take teacher input? Is that how we go about scheduling the school? Now, under week 1, I've got a document where I have kind of put together the state laws for you. There's the same thing in South Carolina in terms of what you have to do, in terms of you know, how many days you got to have, you know, all those kinds of things when we're talking about state laws influencing your budget, and duty-free, planning time, all that kind of thing. That's state law. Local board policy might be for elementary school, we're going to have 120 minutes of reading instruction a day. It may be that we're going to do a block schedule. Local board policy might be that we're going to do an AB day schedule. It may be that we're going to do 30 minutes of science instruction a day. You got to find those local board policies on schedule. Those are called non-negotiables. They come on a sheet. Central office sends them out to principals of the non-negotiables from the district. You got your federal law, then state law, and then the district has their policies. They call them non-negotiables. You will do this. And then EVOS, you've seen your scores, but you need to look in the portal, and it tells you which teacher should be teaching which courses, who gets the best results score-wise. And then teacher input, what kids shouldn't be together, when and what they would like to teach, or some of those kinds of things. But that's got to come last. And so my story on that is I visited a school in eastern North Carolina. You go down past Newton Grove on 40, about halfway between Raleigh and Wilmington, make a left and go across going to Topsail. Out in the middle of nowhere. It's important to the story is I could barely find it with the GPS. I got there, I had to wait an hour to see the principal because they were having a Title I audit. I had to go back 2 weeks later to visit with the new principal. You don't misspend federal money but one time, and that's the end of it. So the whole point of this course is you know keep you from losing your house. I can't keep you from getting sued, but hopefully you will win when you go to court. But in cases like this, if you intentionally misspend federal money, the only recourse they have is they replace you. And what he had done is he had put non-Title I students in Title I classes because he had let teachers pressure him into putting teacher input over federal law. You don't do that but one time. And so the Title I teacher just picked up the phone and called Raleigh and said, I've got 20 students in my class in my classes that aren't Title I kids. I can't be responsible for my kids, getting them to where they need to be if I've got to teach 20 other kids that I'm not responsible for. And they came out there the next day. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. When you schedule a school, federal law has to come first, not just somewhere in the process. It comes first. State law, local board policy, EVOS, teacher input. Always goes in that rationale, in that order. So when you're assessing your scheduling procedure at your school, is that what your school does? Do they do it that way? And then alignment with school improvement team. Again, remember, we're back to that school improvement team. We looked in task 1, we looked at how much input they had in the schedule. Is that there or not? Alignment with legal requirements for ongoing teacher collaborate. That's state law. Diverse populations, we've already done that. Input from faculty, and then utilization of findings as a basis. This is what we're going to do to revise our current schedule or part of the schedule. Like if you're an EC teacher or if you're a CTE teacher, you can just do part of the schedule. And then you will develop a new schedule or a draft of the current one that has those changes in it. And then, of course, in task 4, you just do your competencies. You know how to do those. And so you will reflect on 12 competency of their choice, and then you'll do the other 9 when you get to the skip the second half of the semester. So make sure you understand. You get to pick which 12 you want to do. Those are not mandated for you. You got to do 12 with the OMA and 9 with the skip. You get to pick on either end. All right. Okay. All right.
Dr. Land, there was a question, and I think you'll get to it. You are going to discuss expectations for their discussion board.
Yeah, that comes
activities.
next.
Right.
All right.
Okay, I
So
thought so.
we've covered what we're going to do in the OMA. I can answer any questions or cover any more. You can go to Dr. Stedman, Dr. Massengill, Dr. Bias for help if you're having, or me, if you're having questions. I've had about 8 put in so far, and they've all been perfect. The only thing I said, just go ahead and make sure you find your master schedule before you get too far along, because you're going to need it in task 3. But so far they've been perfect. So that's good. All right. So I'll close out of that. So I want to talk about, before I get to case studies, I want to get to discussion board. Discussion board activities. Again, these are due by the week. You have 6 and 4 case studies. And so this week you've got 1. It's very simple. You simply write me a narrative about what you found from doing these things. The ones that I've gotten so far have been perfect. I've been really pleased. If I embarrass somebody, I'll apologize before we start. But I'll open one up for you and show you what it looks like. Here's wonderful. She interviewed her assistant principal about the plan, told him what he was doing. He was able to find it, very thorough. Talked about budget process, did a safety audit of their school, talked about finances, fundraising, all those things. 5 most important. I mean, that's what it should look like. That's a perfect example right there. Thank you, Carrie, for that one. And everyone that's come in so far has been perfect. I've just been most pleased. You just answer the prompt, go do the work and do the things. And then I'll remind you of anything that I see in there, but I'll remind you of what the takeaways were from doing these activities. We don't just have you do these things. Like the takeaways here. Emergency plans are only effective if they're available. You got to be able to find it first, communicated effectively, updated regularly, and has been practiced regularly. Assessment inventories must be conducted 2 times per month according to state law and documented. School budget must support the school improvement plan, district strategic plan, and school administrators must be knowledgeable of different fund sources and how they can be spent. There's 4 different types of money. There's federal money, there's state money, there's local money, and then there's school money. You got to know how you can spend each one of those, what they're used for. School fundraising, got to follow all your district policies, and you got to understand You can delegate the activity of fundraising, but you can't delegate the responsibility. If the PTO makes off with the money, you're held accountable for not maintaining fiscal control. You got to understand that. I have too many administrators who say, "Well, I don't like that fundraising. I'm going to give that to the parent group to do." Well, that's at your own peril. You're still liable for that, and that's in state law.
Dr. Lamb, will you address this? Because it may be more than one. This person's in a K-8 school, and they work specifically with the 6-8 schedule. Do you want them to do for the whole K-8 school,
No,
or
I
just
would
for the
do
area that
6-8.
they work in the schedule?
No,
Okay.
I would just do 6-8. That's what I'm talking about. I would just do 6-8. You can do the part that you're most involved in. That's what I'd do. I would,
Okay.
like if you're a CTE teacher, just do the CTE schedule. If you're an EC teacher, if you're a 6-8, even though you're in a K-8 building, just do the 6-8.
Okay.
Do the thing that's most relevant. If you want to learn more, you can do more. You know, that's kind of up to you, but you're only required to do the area that you're related to. I mean, you know, don't make, the whole point is the process of scheduling. You know, I doubt, I mean, obviously nobody's going to institute a new schedule at this time of year anyway. It might be something that could be looked at for the fall, but the whole notion is learning the process of scheduling. Did you start with federal law? Did you then go to state law? Did you then go to local board policy on scheduling? Did you then look at EVOS? Did you then talk to teachers? Did you go in that process? If you do it that way, you'll come out with a great schedule that works for your school and supports your school improvement plan. If you don't do it that way, you know, it's just random. And I'll say this, and I'm as serious as I can be about this. The person that makes the master schedule runs the school. If that's the secretary, then the secretary runs the school. You better get a handle on it as an administrator. You better be the one in charge, because you're the one's going to be held accountable for those student outcomes. The secretary is going to be a matador when they come rolling in, wanting to know why your school's not improving, why that you're not getting any results in your school. The secretary is going to be somewhere in the lunchroom, can't be found, or the guidance counselor. I've got nothing against guidance counselors, but you better take control of this. And if you'll learn this process and put this in place, I'll guarantee you will be effective in moving a school academically. And I'll guarantee you this, if you don't do it this way, you will not be effective in moving a school as an administrator. Again, you've already figured out I'm an operations person. I'm just about making things work. I'm not creative. I don't have wonderful ideas or any of that stuff, but I can tell you how to make a school work. Now you got to get in and dig and do the work, but you know, it's not about time, folks. It's about talent and outcomes. It's about performance, not about effort. It's about outcomes. We can work hard but not get it done because we didn't have an effective plan when we tackled this thing. Your school, the success of your school hinges on having a master schedule that supports the initiatives that are important in your school. Without that and the budget that supports that, your academic initiatives will not happen. Your professional development initiatives will be wasted. You've got to learn the system. But back to our discussion boards. Next week, you know, you got to interview an administrator about human resources practice. This should include position openings. The whole point on that one is very simple. It's different in every district. You got to know what the process is. Also, employee assistance. You got to know all that stuff. You know, I had a teacher that failed a drug test. I couldn't let her go because we had employee assistance. I got over the barrel for a whole half year. I couldn't replace her because I couldn't let her go. We had employee assistance, and she'd gone to employee assistance for her substance abuse problem before she failed the drug test. You got to know things like that. When people ask you questions, you got to know what is there. You got to know what the process is and how you end up hiring new people. Let me go to one of those and show you my response on that one. Kayla did a great job on hers. Thank you for that, Kayla. Again, it's a real simple. You go and She just did an email interview with her principal, and it went all the way through how to post an opening, announcements, obtaining candidates, how to interview, the process of hiring, who does reference checks, all those kinds of things, and then benefits. She called somebody and they told her what those benefits were. You got to know what your district does. How do you get personnel, and then what plans do you have for them once you get them? And so here's the takeaway: hiring process is long and involved, unique to each district. Districts that do not fully vet candidates, do the references and background before referring to you, puts a large time burden on school administrators. Takeaway from the other is to be knowledgeable enough to answer general questions and know who to refer staff to for questions in the district HR office. Now, if I was looking for a job in a district other than mine, this would be something that I would be interested in: is how easy is it going to be for me to get new personnel? When I come in and figure out I don't have the right people on the seats of the bus, as Collins would say, and I got to find me some new people, how hard is it going to be? How much work is it? I've worked in 2 big districts and 2 small in my career. When I was in the small districts, I'll use Burke County as an example. When I was in Burke County, you did it all. You had to advertise, run newspaper articles. You had to vet them. You had to interview. You had to do everything. I spent the last half of my career in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. Now, that was high cotton there. I didn't have to do anything. When they sent me 3 candidates, I just had to pick the one I wanted. That was it. I didn't have to do anything else. I had an HR analyst that did all that. They didn't come to me till they had all their application in, blood test, drug test, reference checked out, background check. Everything was copacetic when I got them. All I had to do was go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Pick the one of the 3 that I wanted. In Burke County, I had to do it all. Now, that should not influence your decision about personnel, but it does. It absolutely does. But the bigger issue here, back to the legal thing, not losing your house, if you get it wrong and get an EEOC complaint, that won't go well for you. We'll talk about financial liability as we go. This, negligence, misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. But administrators are now held financially liable if you make bad mistakes. And you can really make bad mistakes getting hiring wrong. And somebody file a complaint on you that you didn't follow the process, whatever it is. They can actually sue you and recoup money from you, tort liability. So you better know how it works in your district. It factors in some of the personnel decisions you make. It also factors into how you hire and make sure you protect yourself and don't get yourself in trouble for doing something inappropriate.
Dr. Lamb, a student said, could you give an example
of how you could do something wrong?
I
recommend.
Yeah, that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Recommend somebody from employment that has not completed their application, and you recommend them to be hired, and they get hired and they didn't meet the qualifications, or there was somebody whose application was complete and that one wasn't, or you recommend somebody who later on fails a drug test or fails a background check. But mainly it's people who don't get the job who will sue you, that claim that you didn't follow the process, that they didn't have an equal opportunity to get that job, that you picked them, they weren't qualified, their references didn't check out, they didn't meet the minimum qualifications, you just hired them because they were your second cousin. That's the kind of stuff that you get. And if you got to do all that, you can't assume that everything's going to fall in place. You got to do it up front. Again, if you're in a district that does it all for you, when they send them to you, they've been vetted, you can hire these people. But if you're doing it all yourself, you better not assume that they're going to pass a background check. You better not assume they're going to pass a drug test. You better not assume that their application is complete when you ask them, is your application complete now? Oh, yeah, it is. We went through that very thing, how ironical, today. we're interviewing for those of you who knew Seth, who was our licensure person. Seth has left us. And so we were interviewing today. And so we had the people that we went through all the applications. We got down to the end, and we had our people. We did interviews today, back to back to back, of the people that we selected to interview. We had to come up. We had to interview 3 people. So we had our interview set up for today. And right in the middle of the interviews today, the person who's chairing that committee that I'm on got a text, got an email from HR that said, "Oops, there was another application that did come in on deadline, but we forgot to give it to you." So we had to go back and meet and review that application this afternoon to make sure that, you know, this person beat the deadline. It just didn't get to us, and we'll have to interview that person now. Now, we may or may not hire that person, but what if we just said, nah, we've already interviewed the person that we want, and that person got their application in on time? They would have a suit against us for equal opportunity employment. And so you got to take this stuff seriously. People will sue you over things like this in a heartbeat. So you got to know what the process is. Don't assume that you know, the work, you know, in business school, they call it the Abilene paradox. We ended up in Abilene, Texas in the summertime, which nobody would go voluntarily. I went because Dr. Stedman thought, I thought he wanted to go, and he went because he thought I wanted to go. And we ended up in Abilene, and nobody wants to go to Abilene, especially not in the summertime. That's kind of what happens. The HR department thought, well, Dale did all the background checks, did all that. I thought they did it. We hire somebody who's an axe murderer. And you can't trust people. Out of the blue. Hadn't seen this. One of my fraternity brothers in college had not seen him in 30 and a half years. I was right at the end of my career in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. Well, I was a couple years away. Hadn't seen this guy in 30 and a half years. Knew he was an attorney from the Washington, D.C. area. He calls me out of the blue. Hadn't heard from him in 30 and a half years. And he says, why can't my daughter get a job in Charlotte? I said, I beg your pardon. He said, my daughter's put her application in. She went to UNC Charlotte. She graduated in elementary ed. I know y'all got 700 openings for elementary teachers. Why can't my daughter get hired? She's a great girl. Nothing wrong. Everything's good. And so I called, you know, my position at that time, I think I was deputy, or maybe I was assistant or associate at that time. And so our police force worked for me that did the background checks. And so I just picked up the phone and called the assistant chief. And I said, can you run this? What's wrong here with this application? Something's wrong here. The dad says that, you know, she's a spotless, you know, she sings in the church choir. She's an angel on earth, and we won't hire her. And he came back to me and he said, oh my Lord, said she's Bonnie and Clyde. She's Bonnie of Bonnie and Clyde. She's been arrested numerous times, drug charges, assaulted a police officer, been in jail, been in rehab, all this stuff. And I'm like, and I called the dad back and I said, that was just mischievous stuff. I said, she was over 21 when this stuff happened. You know, what do you mean it was just, you know, childish, you know, not a big deal? I said, they'd fire me and anybody I knew, my family, if I'd hired somebody like this. You cannot trust people. You have to verify all this background stuff. And I'll tell you right now, if you hire somebody and it comes to light, especially publicly, that they've got some kind of issue, that they've abused a child or something sexual in their past, if it comes to light that you didn't do a background check and catch that, as my late mother would say, your hide won't hold shucks. You won't survive it. You just won't. So you got to know what the process is. Who's going to do what, where, and when, and why. I mean, every little step you got to know. That's me, that's them. Or they're going to do it, or I'm responsible to do it. You've got to work through that. And if you get it wrong, it's about your job now, which is about your house. Everybody keep their house. Not get sued. That's our number one goal, is if we get sued, that we won't lose. I hate to be that crass, but that's just the truth. This is a law and finance course. My job is to keep you from losing your house. And if you get hiring wrong, if you violate EEOC, equal opportunity, if you violate that, ooh, not only could you lose your job, I mean, you could have to pay people some money, and they will sue you over things like that. That's why I said today, we went back and made sure that person got their application in on time. So we had to go back and review their application, and since they met the qualifications as posted, we will have to do an interview with that person. That's the way it works. Even though we were unaware, we're already interviewing today, we're going to have to stop, go back and catch up now. So that's a long-winded explanation, but that's what you do with that one. Our next discussion board, and I'll kind of wait on this one, but we'll be when we get into the module on EC and intervention teams. This is another area, all that federal law. Ooh, you got to be so careful. You got to know what you're doing. We'll talk about that one, and then bullying, harassment, due process, discipline, which is every day, and then one on liability, which it's a simple one, but that opens the door on tort liability when we talk about that one. So those are our four activities for the summer. Here's the place where you put your task in for review. Now on peer reviewing this semester, you only have to do one peer review of the first 3 tasks of the OMA and the first 3 tasks of the SCIF. Try to rotate it among your team members. Teams stay the same unless there's a problem with your teams. Get in touch with your coach and they'll help work that out. But your teams stay the same. And so it says clearly right here under peer reviewing, use the template that's right there. You do one members. You don't have to do one for everybody. You just have to do one. So you only have 6 peer reviews this summer. You only have 6. No video reviews. Upload them back in discussion board to give them back to the author. Put them in the Dropbox to get your grade. So you got 6 of those. So peer reviewing is quick and easy. Everything's got to be faster in 603. You know the process now. You got to pick up your feet and run. And so,
Dr. Lamb, while you're talking about that, you may want to stress to them, because it is 10 weeks and because of the quick turnaround, there shouldn't be a need, but there's no time to turn this work over to the writing center to look at stuff and to get it back to you in time. So they need to be careful about submitting work and thinking that they've got 2 or 3 weeks to wait on something back from the writing center.
yeah. If you need to use the writing center, that's fine. They are open, but they did send out an email today. I'm sure you got it. Said that they have limited staff this summer because of COVID. They're not allowed to bring the full staff in. And so, you better factor that into your thinking. We'll work with you on your writing. We'll be glad to do that. And we're not embarrassed or ashamed, or you shouldn't be either. If you need some help, we'll be glad to give it to you. If you want to go to the writing center, you've got that, but you got to be quick. Everything's got to be quick. Now, in the 4 weeks.
That was my point, yeah. That was my point, that the turnaround time.
Yeah. In the 4 weeks that you don't have an activity, you'll have your case study. I had a question earlier about should you record your Zoom sessions where you get together and work on your case study? No, you don't have to record those. You're going to present on that night, like Zoom session on our 4th night. That'll be your night. You'll present your PowerPoint of your case study that night. Everybody gets to come on and do their part. Now, I'll wear you out. I'm going to tell you before we start. Now, if your feelings can get hurt, they will, because I'm going to wear you out on the case studies. That's the most fun I ever have. And I'll warn you up front, it's not personal. It's just business. But we'll have a good time. But you'll present that night. And so, again, we don't have time. You may have to collaborate at different times. What I'm interested in is your presentation and then your half-page reflection. I would encourage you to wait until after the presentation to write your reflection. So let's look at what it says in case study 1. That's what we're going to focus on tonight. Be sure that you've read chapters 6 and 8 in your law book. The question is, what should the principal's course of action be? Address issues of due process, standards of arbitrary and capricious, the 4 ethical paradigms. Now, under Zoom session 1, I've got lesson plan role of the principal. And that document has all the laws that you got to understand. Let's see. This is 115C288, general statute. And the very first one is our very first case study. To grade and classify pupils is principal responsibility. And so you look at all of these different laws, and there's some on due process and other things, but also we have the 4 ethical paradigms as well. You have to view the case study not only through the legal concern, but the ethical concern as well. So you need to address that in your case study. That needs to be in your presentation, that you looked at justice, care, critique, and profession. And I've got those laid out for you there. And I've got all the laws you need to factor in, you know, the general laws of the principal, and you need to read those two chapters to get any other laws. Because, you know, the first case is about grading. So make sure. And then create as a team a short PowerPoint presentation. And then after that, and I would stress again, wait until afterward, write a half-page reflection on what you learned on this case study. It could be anything from how your group collaborated to laws you weren't aware of or what you took away, anything you want to tell me. Anything. And again, you know, if you want to do it before, that's fine. But I always say if you'll wait, you might change your perspective on these. But that's what we're doing. We got 4 case studies this summer. You do your discussion board activities on weeks that we're not doing case studies. You got to manage your time. Again, I won't send you a notice on Monday morning if you didn't get your work in on Sunday night. I figure you'll get it in later that week. Y'all all have done great. People work at different rates. We've got the COVID issue. Some we're going back to work. It may become, again, as I said earlier, when phase 2 hits, they may have you go back full time into the building. So we just have to, we have to work around whatever. So you're on your own honor to get your work in. Sometimes people get last week and put a lot in. That doesn't bother me. The only thing is don't leave your colleagues hanging on your peer reviews. That's really the only thing that ever bothers me is try to keep up with your peer reviews. Other than that, you're on your own to figure it out. But now you got to hit your metrics. Week 4, we got to have case study 1. Week 6, we've got to have case study 2. Week 8, we got to have case study 3. And then week 10, we'll have case study 4. Now, I've got us planned that we don't have class that last week. We don't have any breaks. But that last week of July, I don't have us planned to have any classes unless we have something we just didn't get to, unless we get stymied. But
somebody asked the question. They said, will they receive a schedule on when the Zoom teams will be presenting?
No, I'll pick. You just got to be ready.
So
again, I told you I'm gonna I'm gonna pick. Most of the time you'll have already turned those in, and I'll look at them and I kind of figure out the lineup.
Right.
You just got to be ready to go. This is real world stuff here.
And this is great to help them get ready for interviewing too, as well.
Absolutely. You got to be able to move on your feet. You got to, it creates a sense of urgency and anxiety. You don't ever know when you're going to get called on. And that's real world. Remember, we're doing gradual release now. We're putting more of the burden on you to manage your anxieties, your time, all that kind of stuff. I had a student email me the other day, and she said, would you let me go back into TaskStream and resubmit my work in TaskStream? I think I can get a better grade. And I said, no. That wouldn't. TaskStream is, everything is about we could all do better if we had more time. It's the issue is how well you can do in the time that you have. And you have to learn how to manage that time. And anxiety is part of that. I hate to say it. I don't want to create anxiety. I'm not doing it for a gotcha. You know you're going to present on that week. But I kind of figure out the lineup. I let different groups go. Sometimes, and I do that mainly because sometimes I'll have somebody that they need to present first and they got something else going on, or maybe they can't present that night. I hate to make a schedule because I've tried to do that and it never worked out. We always ended up breaking the schedule. Then people got mad. Well, we're supposed to go first. Well, but this person needs to go first tonight. Well, I still want to go first. Well, I want my hair to grow back. That ain't happening either.
One more question, Dr. Lamb. One student asked, they said, what do we use the chapter 15 reading for? You would have to respond to that. I don't know what they're referring to.
The chapter 15 is that case study that's in there about the inappropriate behavior. If that's the one that I'm, let me go back to discussion board. It should be right here.
Yeah. Under activity 4.
Yeah, that's the one, the 10th grade female coach, that's in chapter 15. So I have, for each of these activities that I have here, if you'll notice down at the bottom, I've got the corresponding chapters that you should read in the school law book. That kind of tells you what I summarized for you when I give you the response. It's always good to read these chapters before you do the activity, but if not, you know, at least read them afterwards. These are the kind of the chapters, the reading that go along with the activity. I have them right here. This is the reading that goes along with the activities.
And Dr. Lamb, and having done this in the past, that's where you're going to listen for things that they have learned from their readings based on what the law says. So this, you don't have to discuss it. You're going to know whether they've read it or not because they'll talk about it.
Exactly right. That's why I said so far, I've read 8 or 10 of these. They've been perfect. I mean, obviously they're reading their book. They're knowing what they're looking for when they go out there. That law book is not just some, theoretical textbook. It's a practical application of the law. That's why I said you'll get more use out of it than any book you've ever bought in your life. You'll keep that as a principle. That's going to be a desk reference book for you.
Exactly.
And so these activities get you to read your book and you apply them to real world situations. This is a practical course. This is not theoretical. This is how to keep from losing your house. You need to know how to apply this stuff and what it means. And so none of these activities are busy work. This is all stuff that's very important. These case studies are the 4 hottest things going right now in the school business. I go to the school law seminar every September or every other September, and they tell us what the hottest things are. Richard Schwartz, we go to Raleigh, the McKimmon Center there at NC State. It's the hottest ticket in town to get. Everybody who is anybody in the business is there. It's standing room only. He brings 12 attorneys. We go through all this stuff and we sift through. That's what these activities are, and it's what your case studies are. So your 4 case studies, if Dr. Massengill was here tonight, he would tell you as a sitting principal, the biggest thing you're going to have to deal with on a daily basis is grading. Everywhere from grade point average to valedictorian to teacher's grades, the whole deal. We'll talk more about it the week before. When we get to the 3rd week, we'll talk more about this case in particular. That's your first one. Second hot topic, Leandro case, funding. Trying to manipulate funding to give some schools more than others. The law is can't do that. There can be some additional funds, but we'll go through the Leandro case, which is a watershed case in the United States of America on school funding. We'll go through that one. That's the hottest thing going right now, is wanting to give some schools more than others because of at-risk kids. So that's the case number 2. Number 3 is LGBTQ. Again, hottest thing going. And number 4, inclusion, EC, intervention, MTSS, hottest thing going. These are the things that you can make the mistakes the quickest, lose your job or your house the fastest. These are the hot topic. These are the hot button issues. None of this stuff is theoretical. This stuff is all about the practical. It's about the now. It's about what's going on today, not 20 years ago. I left the principalship 20 years ago this year and was in the central office for 10 or 12 years before I retired. This is not from my era. Although I did have a fellow in high school that wore a dress. I did send him home, not because he was wearing a dress, but his dress was too short. Girls complained that I wouldn't let them wear dresses that short, but you know, we didn't have the issues. These are today issues, right now in your school issues. This is a practical course.
Dr. Lamb, Ingrid asked a good question. She said, how do administrators keep abreast of these legal matters if they don't go to school law seminars?
You go to school law seminars and you read your book, but now these school law seminars are for school people. That's why I said it's a hot ticket item. You join the Association of School Administrators and that will get you a ticket. If you don't belong to that, you won't get a ticket. You will not get a ticket to get in, but they have this thing they have a update every year, and they have the big conference every other year. And this is how you stay updated. Your district will send representatives there. I mean, that's a great question, Ingrid. Yeah, you got to go. You got to know. I go every year. I go to every update. I went through the legal track at Institute of Government, so I'm an alumnus of that. I'm so old, I went when it was still in a little building over on main campus before it went to the Friday Center. And so, yeah, you got to stay. You got to go. You know,
And
it's a joint
Kishlin
venture
answered
between
too, Dr.
DEI and ASA.
And Kishlin said too, and this is right. You said that their district representatives are sent, and they should be coming back to principal meetings and sharing this
Absolutely.
information with you all the time.
Yes, absolutely. They will come back. And let me send this text.
Okay, those are great questions.
And yeah, that's what we want to hear. I know you're following along, but yeah, no. District representatives will go. I got started when I was when I was a high school principal. I went to the big one, but then when I was in the central office and the legal department was in my department, that's when I really got started and started going to the updates, going to the big one every other fall. If you join ASA, they'll save you a seat. That's Association of School Administrators. They'll save you a seat. It's a joint venture between Department of Public Instruction and School Administrators Association. Richard Schwartz, you know, the school board's attorney that does all the legal work in North Carolina, he brings 12. That's not an estimate. He brings 12 lawyers, and you work through all that stuff. I mean, it lasts 2.5 days. And they have all the hot button stuff. They have the latest, the changes. They have a whole track on EC and intervention and all that. But yeah, you got to stay up to date on this stuff. And what I'm teaching you today is the latest, greatest until September. If we're out of quarantine, we'll go back and do this again in September. It may be spring before we do it now, but this is from the last one. This is the latest stuff. We'll talk about even the changes to Leandro that came about in the last 2 months. No, this is current events course. This is not your granddaddy's school law course like I had it, where we talked about classic cases from Brown versus Board of Education. No, that's not what this is. Now that's the last thing I'm gonna do tonight. Is I am going to review, and I have these. And so if you're interested, and I'm going to do that right now. Let's see.
Dr. Lamb, while you're doing that, I would encourage them this summer, because of everything that's going on. most of your boards are meeting virtually, and those are live streamed. You need to tap into that. You can get a lot of information
Oh, absolutely.
with what's going on. And then I sent a message out earlier, and I told them that in the planning stages of whatever next year's going to look like, you need to ask, can you be a part, just to be in that, and use that as part of your internship hours, being a part of those, and volunteer to help as much as you can this summer, and just get right in the mix of all of this, and
Yeah.
if they'll allow you. This is everything that you learn this summer is exactly what the principals and the district offices will be having to deal with this summer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can be invaluable. Now, I have summarized for you the most important court cases. It's not all of them. It's the ones that have shaped. Again, back in my day, we'd have sat and went through these and spent our whole semester on these cases. They're not really relevant to you anymore. You need to know the modern stuff. You know Brown, you know Tinker, which is due process, Swan on busing, Title IX, you know, Robinson on federal funding. I mean, here's all of your stuff, but this has shaped where we are. Next week, I'm going to sit and look at these individually and spend a little time on them, but just as a historical perspective of why we're where we are. But you need to, you know, to be an educated person, you need to know these. If you're in a doctoral program, for us at the master's and the postmaster's level that y'all are at, y'all need to know what they are, but you need to know more of the everyday law. What's now, what's modern, what's hip, what's happening. You need to know that stuff. And so we'll cover this next week, but yeah, I have it, and we'll talk about it, but we're not going to spend our semester on this kind of thing. We're going to spend it on things that really matter to you in your job. Looking back, I'm also next week, I'll spend a little time on this budget laws. I'll put them all together for you on money, and then the board policies on money. We'll talk about those next week as well. We'll spend 5 or 10 minutes on this as well. Understanding that South Carolina, they're called titles. North Carolina, let's see, I've got it here. They're called general statutes in North Carolina. They're called titles in South Carolina. They have the exact same thing. They're just numbered differently. But you can see 115C is education. There's 545 general statutes. Some of them are more important than others. I pulled the finance ones out for you. 288 is duties and responsibilities of the principal. I pulled that one out, put it on lesson plan role of the principal. But if you want to know about, there's a link under tonight's. If you want to know about all the laws about school district, you click on this and it'll pop them right up. Remember, grade and classify pupil has all the laws that, you know, that are most specific to the office of the principal. Same for the assistant principal. And so, again, North Carolina general statute, South Carolina titles are what they are. And you can look at all the laws that affect public education that way. This was under tonight, your crisis box, what that's supposed to look like. Your OMA example, that was under tonight as well. Assessment, I was asked if when the past, assignment 1 to do assessment inventory. Under Zoom session 1, here's an inventory form. If your district doesn't have one, then you can use this one. Now, the law is very clear. See, everybody knows the first half of the law. It's in that 288 that we just looked at. And let me go back to that if I've got one up. I do. All right. All right. To conduct fire drills and inspect for fire hazards. Everybody only sees the fire drill. We have one once a month. Last day of the month, we come running out and get our fire drill in. Whew, we're done. Here's the real problem. You have a fire in your building and they check to see if you did your fire drill. Oh, well, I'm in the clear. Did you do twice monthly safety inspection? Did you do an assessment inventory twice a month for fire hazards and other issues. Huh? Where's that? Right here in the law. It says you will do that once a month. It also says you have to do twice each month. As the new assistant principal, when you get your job, you'll be the low person on the totem pole. Everything that nobody else wants to do. So twice a month, you and the janitor with his big ring of keys are going to walk around and do this assessment twice a month. And you're going to document those. And if you don't, if something happens and you don't have it documented that you did a safety inspection, they're going to fry you. I don't pardon the pun, but if you have a fire and you hadn't been doing safety and fire hazard inspections, you're going to get fried. It's right there in the law. Everybody remembers the fire drill. Nobody remembers the twice monthly safety inspection because that's just the assistant principal and the custodian. That's what you're doing. That's why we had you do that in your first activity is because you're going to have to do that when you get your job. Nobody that's been an assistant principal, that whoever the newest one is at every school is the one that gets it.
That's
Don't
right.
matter what else you do. If you're the new person, you're going to do those. You're going to do those building inspections. Just the way it works. And so
Dr. Lamb,
it's in state
failure,
law.
failure to do those and submit them because they have to go to Raleigh
Yes.
or wherever. Failure to do that could cause the superintendent not to get their paycheck.
Paycheck. That's exactly right. Now, if you want to make a superintendent mad, have him miss his paycheck. Unfortunately, I was principal of a school that did catch on fire. We were on a shared campus between an elementary and a junior high, and the junior high building, which we were on shared campus. I had kindergarten kids in the cafeteria when it caught on fire. We used the same cafeteria. The custodians were leaving their custodial closet open, and it wasn't locked. And a junior high kid went in and set some rags with Varsol. If you remember the old Varsol, the flammable stuff we clean wood floors with, set them on fire, burnt the building down. You don't want to be the person who didn't do the safety inspections. That routinely that door wasn't locked, so that it saved them 2 seconds getting in it, and the kids set the building on fire. You don't want to be that person. That's a career ender. That'll do more than bruise you. And so again, everything relates back to the law and these activities that we have you do. We pick the things that are the most relevant that can get sideways on you. So again, you need to know, you can look at all those statutes, but look most closely at 288, which is the duties and powers of the principal, and make sure that when you're doing case studies, you look at this as well, and also your ethical concern. Make sure that you hit that. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way and make sure I've covered everything. When we talk about that assessment inventory, we've got that inventory, but teacher working condition survey or the advanced ed in South Carolina, these are the things that you're going to get graded on facilities as well. And so you got to understand that when we do facilities in this course, this is the things that you're going to get graded on every other year in your teacher survey. Access to instructional materials, technology, communication, office equipment, your environment is clean and well maintained, space to work productively, the classrooms are clean and the environment is safe, internet connection. These are the kinds of things that have to be factored in. These are the things that you should notice when you're doing your assessment inventory as well, because you're going to get graded on them by your teachers. All right. So I think that's pretty much everything that I needed to cover. I'm sorry we've run over a couple minutes tonight, but I think that's pretty much everything that we need to do. Everything else, the box works just like it did last semester. We've got 4 case studies, 6 weekly activities for a total of 10 for 10 weeks. Again, you only have to do 6 peer reviews. I apologize for not making a schedule for your presentations, but if I do, we'll just break it and then everybody will be madder. So The fun is in the anticipation and the anxiety of when you get to present. So I kind of pick them on what they look like, because usually I have them, you send them in before that, and I kind of pick on, I pick them in terms of what we want to stress and what you did and didn't do. Sometimes you get to go first because yours is the best. Sometimes you get to go because it's the worst. It's the worst, according to the point we're trying to make. But it's a fairly straightforward course. I tell students, for the purposes of this course, there is no gag. There is no hidden agenda. For the purposes of this course, who's buried in Grant's tomb is Grant. There's no joke. There's no gag coming. This is just a straightforward course on how do you run a school. It's pretty simple stuff. How do you make sure that every day that you do the legal thing so that you don't get yourself or your school district in trouble? You don't cause your superintendent not to get paid that month. That you do the things that you need to do. And we'll talk more. I've kind of given a whole overview of the whole course tonight. And we'll talk more specifically about individual things. So I don't mean to think that we're going to rush through everything like we did tonight, but I like for everybody to kind of get a big picture of this is not, again, your grandpa's school law course. This is every day, this is how we do things course now. It's hot topics. It's current things. It's not based on, stuff that happened 60 years ago. This is about how we administrate in the modern environment of schooling for you to be successful. That you can talk about, who presented Brown versus Board. That's very important. It's shaped, but it's more important to know how to deal with LGBTQ kids today. That on a day-to-day basis, you don't have to deal with Brown, but you do have to deal with Leandro. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to make sure we're doing hot topics. So I'm going to open it up to you. Thank you for participating. Dr. Stedman, thank you for being with us and answering questions on our chat tonight. We'll open it up now. You can unmute yourself. If you have questions, again, we didn't go near as far over as I thought we would. If we get done in 75 minutes, we've done well. We'll try to stay a little closer to our time as we go. We sometimes run over a little bit, but we try to stay to our hour 15. Anybody have anything for the good of the group? Well, I'm excited. As you have already figured out, this is my milieu. This is what I do. This is my most exciting thing in the world for me is to teach this course. I'd rather do this than eat. It is my favorite thing. And I hope that you will share mine and Dr. Stedman's enthusiasm. We're both old operations guys. This is what we did for a long time, and we really love this. And we hope that you will put up with us and that you will like it too, and that you'll find some value in what we do this summer that'll help you in your career. As always, thank you for choosing us in Gardner Webb. We are glad to see you back. Hope everything's well. Don't hesitate to be in touch. Call, Zoom, email, text. We're always available. And I want to again say what great work I've seen so far, and I really appreciate that. So everybody have a good week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.